A couple of armchair GMs who have yet to be wrong with any of their Timberwolves takes. Right. It's Flagrant Howls with Phil Mackey and Kyle Theige.
We actually might have to change that liner because there was that guy in the YouTube comment section last week that said that we've been wrong on literally everything. So we might have to get the big voice guy to make something happen there. That these two guys have been wrong about literally everything since they started doing this podcast.
And still have a better track record than Tim Connolly. Is what they would say. Is what they would say. Is what they would say.
Or they? Oh, no.
No, is what they would say. I saw Tim last night. Spirit. We'll get into it. Spirits are calm. But yeah, that guy did kind of break the show on us being like, I thought I was doing really well, and then he's like, actually, you got this wrong, and this wrong. It's like, damn. Okay.
Did he do any media, or was he just kind of floating around? Because you were the Wolves put a back-to-back in Portland. Kyle, you live in Portland, so you were in the arena.
Yep.
And we'll get a lot of your thoughts on just the general vibe of this weird basketball team. Did he do any media, or was he just kind of floating around?
No,
BSing?
And again, a little how the sausage is made, kind of behind the scenes stuff. We're behind the arena, like we're in the tunnels, we're talking to people and stuff. So he had come in, he was at the game on Monday. Dell Demps, who is a member of their front office, was at all the games. He travels with the team a lot. I know we like to make fun of all the picks they don't have, but that doesn't mean that these teams don't send all these guys to different locations to scout and to do all these things. But yeah, no, Tim was there. No media stuff. You get to kind of chop it up a little bit. It's always just kind of like off the record stuff. But
does he look guilty? Does he walk around in shame? That's what I want to know.
Is
he hanging his head, trying to avoid eye contact because of just the implosion that he has caused here?
He has great shoes. I think he might be kind of a sneakerhead. Which again, if you essentially own part of the Timberwolves, it's probably not hard to get access to some good shoes. But no, really, truly, because I chopped it up with him a little bit. As we get into this too, like the vibe from this team, clearly I was there on Saturday. They had just had their statement win against the Jazz, Rudy's return. Then they kind of dropped 2 to Portland. It's frustrating. People listening to this are ready to, just burn down Target Center. It is so frustrating, and it's extra frustrating because it's not fun. They're not a fun team right now. They are so average. There's some stats we can get into where they are just the 15th or 16th best team in the league, and that's like where you don't want to be.
Dude, but, actually, Dane posted one of them. He had, it was like offensive net rating, defensive, and then overall net rating before Cat injury and after, and it was like the same, just 13th, 17th.
Timberwolves with Cat, 21 games, offensive rating 19th, defensive rating 14th, net rating 18th. Timberwolves without Cat, 6 games, offensive rating 19th, the same, defensive rating 13th, pretty much the same, net rating 17th, the same. They are just. We're not in really small sample. I mean, it's only been 6 games without Carl, but we're not really in small sample size anymore because we are starting to get to the second quarter of the season. But everywhere you look, it's just like this team is just average. And that's better than being like a bottom feeder, right? You're not the Rockets, you're not the Magic, you're not the Hornets, but it can be even worse sometimes when your team is just kind of like not going forward, not going backwards. It's just kind of, like Ant did that one game, just standing still, doing nothing. That's kind of where the Wolves are at. But to give you a little bit, like the vibes at 13 and 14 are just, frustrated talking to guys in the locker room and stuff, but it's not, the coolest thing I learned this weekend, Phil, was just, I'm way more pissed off than they are, right? Or like, we're all way more mad. Every loss
is that
hurts.
good or bad?
I don't know. I'm kind of, again, this is therapeutic. I'm just kind of spewing it out now, but, every loss that we encounter, we get even more madder because it's like, oh, we don't have no future. Like we have no picks. And some of that is accurate. But they still think they're a team that needs to figure it out. For all the things that haven't started well. I mean, like the D'Lo stuff has been really promising. Rudy has I think I saw Rudy has 4 20 rebound games this season, and the next closest person in the league has 1.
Yeah.
So there are good things to hang your hat on, but then you kind of run into, and maybe we'll get into this, like, now you're starting to run into a lack of talent without Carl, without Taurean Prince, without Jordan McLaughlin. And you're also running into a situation that is really scary. It's like a math problem. Like you're coming to a fight with knives and your opponent has guns. And it's like, oh, that's not great. So, they were pretty much outdueled from 3 last night by Damian Lillard himself. And that's probably one of the more concerning things. It's like this team has regressed from a volume 3-point shooting team to a little more, 3 yards in a cloud of dust type running game.
And I definitely want to get into the math problem. I have a little thing to throw at you regarding the math problem. So and last night was just like the absolute brightest illustration of that math problem. But you referenced D'Lo, and D'Lo has been a lot better in the last like 8 to 10 games than he was to start the season. He said last night, I'm sure you were there for this, we're still figuring it out. I think we're way better than our record. We're still just learning how to start, finish, adversity. We're still learning all those things from our team. So the longer the season, the better for us. I mean, it is 82 games, and you still have way more than half the season. But it just, I guess, just back to sort of the vibes, it's interesting to me that fans seem more pissed off. Let me ask you this. Do they seem not pissed off because they're just resigned to like, oh, we don't really care that much? Or is it we're not panicking because we know this is going to turn around at some point?
That's a great question. I one of the few times I just want to really stress, like, not really a journalist here, just a dude that they let in the locker room and it does a podcast a couple times.
Whatever he's about to say should be taken with a block of salt here, basically.
So it's not. So again, a game finishes and you go back into a locker room and you get to talk to the head coach. That always happens. And then they open up the locker room and you go into the locker room and you get to talk to 2 or 3 guys. That's kind of how the sausage is made a little bit. So like last night it was D'Lo and Jalen and stuff and Kyle Anderson. It's not that they're resigned or like, oh, same old Timberwolves, and this is the one thing I do want to stress. It's not that they don't care, but like Kyle Anderson, for example, or even D'Lo, who is a vet, who, 26, but he's been in the league forever. It's more just like, I asked Jalen Noel straight up, I was like, is that the type of game when a guy gets so hot from like Lillard, he almost broke the 3-point record, that you like grind extra film, or you just kind of, scrap it and say, hey, a dude got hot, let's move forward. And he was like, no, like, we're going to watch extra film tomorrow. Like, we're going to really like, because, sometimes you just get blown out, and that's one of the classic, oh, coach threw the tape away and we're just going to move forward.
Yeah.
And then, Kyle Anderson had a really awesome quote that I will kind of want to tattoo on my face about the Timberwolves. But he said, something I've learned in the league is that when you're going through hell, keep going. And it was a cool quote. Kind of pessimistic to consider 27 games in being hell. But
he goes through hell more slowly than some of his other teammates, though. That's the slow-mo.
Yeah, he goes in
feels
first
the burn
gear
a little
through
bit
hell.
more. Yeah.
He can't sprint through it. So no, it's not that they don't care. It's not that they're just cashing checks. I think that's the NBA mentality. And that was the coolest thing I learned in the last 72 hours ever. It's just what we see on Twitter, how we feel, what we talk about can be accurate, but they're a little isolated from that and insulated in terms of they do have to subscribe to D'Lo's mentality of never too high, never too low. Because last night the Monday loss was a low point. You just got spanked again on the road by one man. And if you allow yourself to get really too low, it just kind of messes everything up. So it hasn't been great. It was borderline brutal basketball to watch for a couple games. I wish I would have done something else with my time, but they just, you regroup, you get into LA last night, you watch extra film today, as Jalen said, you keep going through hell, as Kyle said. And then to D'Lo's point, you have to have a level of confidence. Even none of those guys in that locker room care about the picks, is kind of my point. None of those guys are worried about the 2029 pick swap. They don't even know about it. They're just focused on what can we do as a unit to try to figure this thing out. Will it happen? I don't know. But that was my reporting.
By the way, Josh Minot had a steal last night. I just want people to know that the cupboards aren't totally bare, okay? Josh Minot had a steal last night.
I will say that we basically led the charge to get Luka Garza freed. He played. And then I was like, I've turned all my attention last week to Josh Minot. So when I wanted to see him play, I didn't mean like that in a game where it was mop-up duty 3 minutes into the third quarter. But they basically played the Iowa Wolves last night for the last 7 minutes. So that was kind of tough, but for sickos like me, I had fun. Matt Ryan, by the way, I watched like an hour of Matt Ryan shoot this weekend, like in shoot around and in the mornings and stuff. He's phenomenal. Phil, to quick pivot, like Matt Ryan is such a great example of a guy who can barely stick on an NBA roster, is on a two-way, he's 1 foot out the door to be on the Shanghai Sharks, and he would still cook everybody at LA Fitness. Like he would drop 70 in your local rec league. Like that's just the talent level of when one of your buddies is like drunk and it's like, oh, I could get 3 baskets in the NBA. It's like, no, buddy, you can't, because Matt Ryan would tie you up and he would hit just 10 threes in your face. So
that's definitely not gonna happen. What would you say you have learned? How many games? It's been 6 games, 6 full games since Karl-Anthony Towns went down, and the Wolves are 3-3. They were 3-1 in their first 4 games. If we would have done this podcast after the Utah win, I think it would have been, for me anyways, it would have been tinted with a little bit more.
Yep.
But on the flip side, they've lost these last 2 against Portland. It's not just Dame getting hot. There's also other things that are broken here. So just in general, what have you learned about the Timberwolves or some of the players in the 6 games since Cat has gone down? Because I think that's the biggest opportunity here is, okay, let's take him out for a second. Maybe some guys, almost like when Ja Morant went out for Memphis, like whether they're better or not, or it's the Ewing theory or not, put that aside for a second. Here's a bunch of dudes that can now sort of discover who they are as players, how they mesh, and then you plug this guy back in and you make it work. So what have you learned about the Wolves and or individual players in the last 6 games?
That we talked about this last night with Kyle Anderson. He really believed it's a thing, is that no excuses for the Timberwolves. No one's trying to, no one feels sympathetic for their current situation, but it is a fact that they are without Karl-Anthony Towns, Taurean Prince, and Jordan McLaughlin. Obviously, Cat starts, but when you take out those 2 bench guys and you take out a starter and Carl, then other guys are kind of pushed into different roles, right? Like Kyle Anderson's not going to start on this team when Cat comes back. Some of these guys aren't going to have the specific minutes or the specific assignments when Carl's back that they do now. So the bench, like one of the things you've noticed in the last 6 games, the bench sucks. But that's because they have just 2 less guys to bring off the bench. I mean, they really are D'Lo has been fantastic. There's no way to discredit him. But when he goes off the floor, they just don't have, like, Jalen's not, for all the good things Jalen Noel does, he's not running point. So not having Jordan McLaughlin sucks, but then you're forcing like Ant to do a little more, Jalen, and these guys are just having to be forced to do things that now your benches. I mean, the Portland bench is like one of the 7 best benches in the league. So I think taking guys out and then having to plug them in, it just kind of hurts everyone else. It's like our discussion about, could Jordan McLaughlin be a starting point guard? Probably not. He's just a really good 2. But when you take out, when you take him out and now Jalen has to play point, it's just the ball movement doesn't work. And it's just a mess. But also too, last night their starting 5. I asked Finch about this. They had 27 rebounds in their starting 5 last night. Rudy Gobert had 20 of them.
That's embarrassing.
So again, I said it at the top, like Rudy has, I think, 4 20 rebound games. The next
2 since Cat's been out, by the way.
Yeah. And whatever, this is all on the court stuff with Rudy, in my opinion. I'm talking about, like, I think he's been good. I don't like his field goal percentage is high. He's getting things around the rim. He's grabbing all the rebounds, but no one else on this team wants to go rebound. Jaden McDaniels played 66 minutes against the Blazers this weekend and had 1 total rebound. That's a guy who I was like, I'm glad they didn't give up extra. They kept him instead of extra picks, but Jaden can't play 28 minutes, have 2 points and 1 rebound.
No, that's where I almost feel like something we're learning about Jaden McDaniels is he's wildly talented. Yeah. I don't know that he has figured out exactly what he's supposed to do on this team yet. And he just, by nature of being Jaden McDaniels, he can sort of bounce around and he can still, there'll be nights where he'll get you 15 or 20 points on 6 shots because he's efficient. And there's some nights where he's playing excellent defense, but I don't know that he shows up to the arena every night and knows, all right, tonight I'm doing these 2 things. I think it's almost like a different checklist every night for him, and he gets sort of lost. It's amazing. Like you said, Rudy has more 20 rebound games, and he's among the league leaders in rebounds like he always is. But this is one of like the 5 worst defensive rebounding teams in the league.
Yep.
Why?
And it's into the one more thing on the Jaden thing, like, yes, you saw the Blazers backcourt cook all weekend, right? Like, I think they had a combined 66 on Saturday, and then Dame had 11 threes last night. You can still get yours and have to work for it. Like, I thought Jaden, in his defense, made guys work for it on defense. That's a calling card of his. He is going to be in your face, and he's going to make you work. The problem is, and I noticed this last night, is that whoever's guarding Jaden on offense totally gets the night off because he's not really doing much. So you might be making Dame work on defense, or when he's on offense and you're guarding him. But then when Dame's on defense, he was just kind of chilling with his hands on his knees in the corner because Jaden's not really cutting. He's not really active around the rim. He's not trying to get offensive rebounds. So that's one of the guys that, I mean, they're not 3-3 since Carl went out because of Jaden McDaniels, but you would have thought that with Carl out that Jaden would have been, this is what we said in August. Like, you have to give them 12 and 8. There's no reason. You're the second tallest guy on the team. There's no reason you can get one rebound in a game that predominantly was Josh Hart, Anthony Simons, Damian Lillard. Like, you need to just get to the rim more, get rebounds, try to, maybe get some offensive rebounds as well to get extra possessions. But I thought it's a nerdy little stat, but that 20 of the 27 rebounds, and like, I guess Nas had 4, but really no one else had like more than 2.
Yeah.
It's becoming a real thing now. That's like, why don't these guys gang rebound? It's a big deal because when they give up offensive rebounds, they just get cooked again.
But part of it is, and again, this is just my amateur, sort of eye test. I think a big problem early in the season was they're not getting back on defense enough because you got these 2 huge 7-footers. It's like, you guys get back. Everyone needs to get back. If the 2 7-footers can't get back quickly enough, then the other 3 dudes for sure need to get back. So it's almost like they're balancing. We got to get back, so we don't allow transition points, or so we can at least make them have to run an offensive set. But if your instinct is to just get back, you're not going to grab as many offensive rebounds.
Yep.
On the defensive side, I don't know. I don't have as easy of an explanation for that, other than they just don't have guys who are instinctually great or give the effort level needed on a nightly basis. Like, Vando, every single night when Jared Vanderbilt was on this team, he came to the arena and said, well, all right, I'm going to get hands in passing lanes. I'm going to skin my knee diving on the court 5 different times, and I'm going to grab every possible rebound I can. I'm going to fill all those gaps. So until someone steps up and does that other than Gobert, it's going to be tough. I will say one thing I have learned in the last 6 games, and I don't know if it's just him getting a little healthier. He had some knee things that were bothering him, or if it's just him exploring the space more with Karl Anthony Towns. I think we've seen the full version, the peak version of Rudy more in the last 6 games than maybe in the first 15 games. And you've seen it in the box score a couple times with the 20 rebound games. If you put stock into individual plus minus, he's been a plus 30, even with a couple blowout losses. He's been a plus 30 over those 6 games when he's on the court. And on the season now, here's a fun stat for you. The Timberwolves defensively, this is the Mackey stat that you coined last week.
Here we go.
So the Timberwolves have allowed among the fewest, they're like top 5 in allowing the fewest number of shots inside 10 feet. So they are preventing teams from taking close shots at a higher level than almost anyone in the NBA. That is the Mackey stat. That is praying mantis Rudy Gobert making you deviate from the lane or the rim to shoot something outside of 10 feet that you may or may not want to. And I think we're seeing some of that as well. But the perimeter defense has taken just as much of a nosedive on the flip side. So
I didn't mean to laugh while you were talking, but these teams travel with more luggage and more people than I can imagine. I don't know how big those Delta charters are, but someone from the team came up to me on Saturday and said that they really liked us calling it Mackey's. So
wow. Someone else, people on the inside.
People on the inside have referenced a Mackey, but and this person said something else to me too, and it was just kind of spitballing back and forth, having fun. But they're like, JaVale McGee used to block a lot of shots, and he plays for the Mavericks now. But he's like, he still was a sieve defensively a lot of times. Because I see sometimes post game and in mentions or on Twitter, people being really upset that Rudy doesn't have 6 blocks. Like Jaren Jackson last night for the Grizzlies had 8 blocks. But there are still levels to this. And that's not even being a defender of Rudy. They're so average. They're so mid that I have to start to look at individual players. I don't even know if we can do 2-3-man rotation stuff right now, but I really think that Rudy
we can try.
I think you're right. Rudy on the court, Rudy is kind of coming into his own again. They've scrapped some of the offensive stuff they do with him. He did even have last time he had a Euro step finish. He is, dude, whether you like him or not, I don't think you realize how hard 20 rebounds is. Even if you're 11 feet tall, he is constantly battling to put himself in position. He's setting really good screens. We asked Ant about that on Saturday or at shoot around. Like Ant's like, I'm starting to figure out this whole screen thing more, because I always used to think, Phil, that it was just like the chemistry talk about setting screens was just like figuring out which side you want to go on. Well, there's things that Ant was saying, like D'Lo likes the screen to be held more or longer, because D'Lo's a little more slow around the pick and like kind of likes to look around and stuff. And you know how he dribbles, it's kind of so, where it's Ant, like he wants to get around that Rudy pick and then go.
Yeah.
So there's just different guys. It's like that guy likes his soup really hot, right? That guy likes his porridge a little cooler. So I think this is probably the best you've seen of Rudy. Yes, it's a small sample size, 6 games or 3-3. They kind of dropped when I thought against Portland on that Saturday night, but he's looked really good. But to spin it all back, and I know this is what we want to talk about, because I know Friday night, a lot of people started packing Karl's bags. The Monday night game where Lillard just outshot the Wolves from 3 by himself was one of those big moments where you're like, man, it'd be pretty nice to have the self-proclaimed best shooting big in the world, right? Like we needed a guy to at least be out there to, because they just don't really have. I mean, Naz Reid is like basically the third guy they go to now to shoot threes, without Taurean Prince as well. But like they just need more offense in these games where it's going to be 130, 128. And those are the moments where you miss Karl. Again, not just taking anything away from Friday, because they looked like a professional team for 48 minutes and they didn't need Karl. But then, the pendulum swung back the other way and they probably could have used him last night.
Makes note to discuss the Malik Beasley fiasco at the end of that game. We'll come back, put a pin in that.
Yes. I don't want to miss it.
We'll come back to that. Let's talk about this math problem that you bring up here. And I will say that for those because there is a section of Wolves fans, and I have had one, if not both feet in this section before, that would just pack Karl-Anthony Towns' bags for any number of reasons and say goodbye. To defend that group of people for a second, nobody on the planet is saying that you should pack his bags or would pack his bags and get no bags back.
Right. Yep.
So if you were to ever pack his bags, you'd probably get some other bags back that could shoot some threes and help alleviate the loss of a 3-point shooter. Yep. So I just want to make that clear. And I want to see what these guys look like without him to sort of simplify some roles. And then I want to see what happens when you layer him back in. And then we can have a full conversation in the summer about like what actually should happen. But if they do wind up deciding to move on from Towns, it is not just an extraction of Towns. It's an extraction of Towns and an addition of assets that could help whatever nucleus you have left.
It's pretty much like, it's not just they're better without Karl, send him to LaGuardia or whatever, and then just this. It's like you would be mixing in, essentially, if you just did a Karl for the Rudy trade, like you'd mix in your shooter, right? You'd get Malik Beasley or something, right? And you'd go find an energy guy like
Vando, yeah,
right? Like, so basically you just trade Karl to Utah. So, and then you get a couple picks. So I'm with you on that. It's just in this current iteration, my biggest take on December 13th right now is this might just be a 500 ball club. This is the experiment. And that is actually the thing I'm most excited about. I want to watch 1 or 2 more weeks of a Rudy by himself center kind of rotation and with guards and see if they can bring the energy a little more. And then once these guys, I said it on last week, everyone starts to have a role now, right? D'Angelo Russell is just not the point guard, really. He is just a off-ball guard who is scoring. I mean, I think he's leading the league in like mid-range percentage lately. He's like, and he's getting to the rim more. He's been great. Ant's been low-key making a leap if you really look at his stats. Rudy as well. But now I'm really excited to throw Karl back in, because it's either going to be like, okay, everyone else figured out their role and now Karl's going to plug all these holes, or it's going to look like the first 15 games of the season. And then you're going to know exactly at that point, someone has to go.
Yep. And so part of this is solving the math problem, and Karl helps with this. So last night, the Blazers made 21 threes. And that, by the way, was them throttling down for the entire fourth quarter. Would be throttling down, slowing down, I guess. Throttling up. Throttling up. If you're going to slow down, you're going to throttle up.
Yeah.
Throttle down will be going fast. So they throttled up.
Yep.
Because Dame didn't Dame have like a leg injury, kind of, he felt like a twinge or something.
Mm-hmm. He's a pride guy. Like, I think there's teams in the league that would have put him back in and he would have tried to hunt for Clay's 14 threes record.
Yes.
And he was pretty mature. He spoke after the game too. He's like, I want to break the 3-point record. the right way. So he's a good guy. But yeah, he could have came out and given him.
We had them bagged in the third quarter. I'm not going to come back out there.
Yeah. I wasn't going to break the record against Luka Garza.
So they made 21 threes. The Wolves attempted 27. So last night, and this isn't going to happen every night, but I have the math on that too. So the Blazers had 63 points from three. The Wolves had 20 points from three because they made 10 of 27. It's not like a terrible night. A 42-point gap in three-point makes just basically going into the game, right? I mean, the game played out the way that it played out, but how are you going to make up for a 42-point gap in a game like that? And the answer might be if a team gets that hot from three, how many times are you beating a team that hits 21 threes? Or one guy hits 11th the first three quarters?
Yep.
Now, it's not always just like, well, we got unlucky. There are ways that you can defend those shots better than the Wolves have. But let's zoom it back out to just like a normal game on the season. Because last night was kind of an anomaly. I could listen to in a vacuum, well, one guy hit 11 threes in the first three quarters. Especially on the road, you're not going to win that game. Okay, but what does the season look like? So the Wolves make 11 threes per game on average at a low percentage. So it's only 11 threes, and it's like bottom third of the league in terms of three-point make percentage. So they're eating up more shots to get their 11 threes, which is near the bottom of the league. Opponents are making 14 threes per game against the Wolves at a higher, like a top 5 percentage shooting rate. So they're starting the game with a 9-point gap in 3 points makes, basically before the whistle even blows, and a less efficient rate. So how are you going to make up for that gap? Okay, well, maybe you're going to grab more rebounds and clean up the glass. Well, that hasn't been the case. They have been one of the most efficient 2-point scoring teams in the NBA, but not enough to make up for the gap in 3-point offense deficiency, 3-point defense deficiency. And they're not exactly like showing signs of playing great perimeter defense to slow opponents to this point anyway. So it's just if you're going to start the game being that worse than your opponent shooting threes and say, all right, every night we need to find like 9 to 15 points on average elsewhere. Think about how much better you have to be in the paint or in transition or getting extra possessions via offensive rebounds or getting to the free throw lane, right? And they're not great enough in those other areas collectively to make up for it. And that's why they're below 500 right now.
I mean, hell, I think they only had 10 turnovers last night. I think it might have been the lowest mark of the season.
And they got smoked.
You got beat by 19 points. I did a pod yesterday with Chris Hine and Dane, and we one of the things we just kind of looked at all the splits since Carl was out. And in the 3-point frequency thing, like you said, they were 12th in the league in frequency. And then when Carl was out there, 24th. Again, that also, there's some hidden noise in there that there's no Taurean Prince as well. Because we actually asked Finch about it Saturday night. We're like, hey, again, the knife to a gunfight thing, what's going on? And he was like, well, we're missing 11 attempts a game from two guys. So that's a thing. But another, to kind of build on your stat, you talked about 2-point percentage. The Wolves outscored Portland last night, 60-48 points in the paint. 6th consecutive game that they've outscored their opponent in the paint. All 6 of those games are without Carl. But you're 3-3. So again, anytime I can just take whatever we're talking about and spin it into football, it's just, they're like a running team. They really are. They're just a team that runs the ball a little more in a league where it does seem like you can't really win or become elite without throwing. And that's going to be, again, that's the thing you're excited about is like, do enough of these guys now have the confidence? Like, D'Lo, they lost, but he is at peak confidence right now, and he's playing really well. He's doing everything you want. If they plug these guys back into the the charger and everyone else kind of feels more comfortable, can it take off then? Because if not, then again, that goes back to something major has to happen. But to your point, this is not an efficient team in terms of like super high basketball IQ, like the Warriors or something, or the Celtics. Like they're just chopping their margins down in such a way that you kind of have to play perfect basketball. Yeah. And they did on Friday. They played perfect basketball against the Jazz, in my opinion, for 48 minutes. And that's why they just kind of took all the punches and then just put them to bed. But then on Saturday, second game of a back-to-back, I thought they played 42 good minutes. And because they don't have any of these advantages of just winning shootouts, they lost the game.
Yeah. We're going to talk about, speaking of that Jazz game, we're going to get to flagrant or no, but in just a second here, we're going to talk about one of the dumbest things I've ever seen complained about in a basketball game.
I wish we would have just recorded live Friday night when the vibes were high. And I was, as people probably know on Twitter, very drunk. But let it out. Let it out.
We're going to get there in a second. I do want to shout out a couple of our friends here. Number one, Federated Insurance, Federated Mutual Insurance Company, official partner of the Minnesota Timberwolves, helping keep the lights on here at Score North, and thus Flagrant Howls on a regular basis. So they're all about, it's like having a great rim protector for your business. When the waters can get a little choppy sometimes in business, it's nice to have that guiding hand, that protection in the paint, if you will, roaming around with 100+ years of experience based in Owatonna. They are one of us, so to speak. And you can find them online at federatedinsurance.com, where it's our business to protect yours. Also, St. Thomas men's basketball, now Division I St. Thomas men's basketball as of last year. They have a holiday flash sale going on right now. You can watch the Tommies, who are one of the top shooting teams in the country, I might add. $5 tickets to see the Tommies battle. If you're listening on this Tuesday, actually tonight they're playing Wisconsin Green Bay. You can find that game on 1500 ESPN. Go to TommySports.com to buy your $5 tickets, or just go to the ticket office on game day and watch one of the best three-point shooting teams in college basketball. So there you go.
Shout out the Tommies.
Go Tommies. Roll Toms. I almost went to St. Thomas. I was like committed to go play some baseball at St. Thomas when I was coming out of high school and go to St. Thomas. And then I took a tour of the University of Minnesota campus, stood on one of like the Silver Bridge and looked at the skyline.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oh my God, this is badass.
I think I figured out what college I was going to go to like 6 days into August. I was like, I should probably go to college. And then I just was like, I'll just go to the one in my hometown so I can live in my parents' basement. So, but shout out to the Tommies.
Where'd you go? You go into
University of North Dakota, Fighting Sioux. Now they're the Fighting Hawks. But actually, this is another thing. Like, we show up to the arena at like 4:30 on a game day. I really do love covering games. Shout out to the Wolves PR for letting me go there. But some things I saw this weekend. Terry Porter was in the house. Former Timberwolves assistant, former Timberwolves guard. He used to coach Portland State, I think, or maybe it was Portland. He was a basketball coach and then he got let go. But he was in attendance. Saw an Alexei Shved jersey. Tried to buy it from the person. They weren't interested.
Was it actually Alexei Shved? Was it?
It might have been actually. It might. He probably would have been the Wolves' 7th best player on Saturday. And then I also saw someone who had a University of North Dakota sweatshirt, and I basically he was like sitting in the stands, got there really early, and I like ran up and like hugged him. He didn't know who I was. So, but shout out to that guy because I never see Sioux fans around. So shout out to the Sioux, shout out to the Tommies.
Love it. Yeah, Terry Porter, one of my favorite under the radar Timberwolves contributors from the 90s. He was like a big leader in the early part of KG's career, like in the mid to late 90s. And then obviously he was a part of the NBA Finals Blazers that got beat, I think, in 6 games by. That was the second of the Jordan first three-peat. Clyde Drexler, Terry Porter, and a bunch of other dudes. So.
Yeah, I thought I read somewhere that. So this was on Wikipedia, good source for information. But Porter signed as a free agent with the Wolves and prior to the 95-96 season, and helped the Wolves clinch their first ever playoff berth in 96-97 and first winning season the following year. So maybe forgotten by younger fans. I know it was 20-some years ago, but yeah, he was like one of the architects of the first good-ish Timberwolves team.
Yes, he was one of he was like the Torian Print. He was like the veteran guy who's kind of been around. He was a better player than that. He was actually a pretty big-time scorer. But okay, the end of that Jazz game. So
this is the only reason I wanted to record today. I need your opinion.
What is so? It's Malik Beasley doesn't exactly show the best judgment historically. Didn't he like pull a gun on a Parade of Homes observer van or something? Dude, just calm down. And then spent a summer in the clinker. But the Wolves have won the game. The clock is ticking down. Mathematically, the game is over. And the Jazz decide to full court press, double team, try to force something. Okay. Well, if you're going to do that, then boom, we'll just play tic-tac-toe, boom, pass over here. And then Rudy is just standing under the hoop. He grabs it. Not even an authoritative dunk. He just drops it in. And they win the game. And then Malik Beasley comes over and complains to Rudy, gets all in Rudy's face. I love how Rudy just kept his mouth guard in and just stared down, straight down his nose at Malik Beasley. And I saw these people on Twitter chirping, well, Rudy, I don't know, it's bad sportsmanship. Rewind to the Jazz Inside Target Center If you remember at the end of that game, which the Jazz players who used to be Timberwolves literally treated like game 7 of an NBA Finals, Vando threw down the most and I wasn't mad about it, the most disrespectful, ridiculous dunk at the end of regulation, and then let a primal scream out as the Jazz won that game. I didn't hear anyone complaining about that. Totally unnecessary dunk at the whistle in the fourth quarter and a primal scream, basically taunting the Timberwolves. Who cares? And so for Malik Beasley to get mad about just a lay-in, a drop in the bucket for Rudy Gobert was one of the most hypocritical, dumb things I have ever seen. End rant.
Timberwolves lifestyle podcast. We do talk about things other than hoops. I would say this. I pretty much don't respect you if you don't have self-awareness, right? Self-awareness ties into if you can dish it out with the best of them, but you can't take it. That's an issue for me, and we're not going to vibe. I was at that Jazz game in Minnesota back in October, and yeah, it sounded Jared Vanderbilt was in the wild, just screaming, making animal sounds, and it was great because those guys were really pissed off about being traded.
Yeah,
right. So no issue with that. Vando finished it with a dunk. It was embarrassing. They walked off the court. For them to not you said it, not me, about Malik. Malik Beasley is not the guy that should be complaining about not following the unwritten rules. Okay. Because you weren't even following the written rules when it came to the law. So I don't need to tell you to be the guy that's the unwritten rules. Also, if you want to get really nitpicky, the night before or Wednesday before that game, the Wolves played the Pacers. Really good win there too. The spread in that game was 4.5. The Wolves get a stop. There's a couple seconds left. They're up 4. Jaden has the ball. Rudy, because this is one of the things I like about Rudy. He does play till the end. He plays till the entire whistle. He sprinted down court.
Right. He's playing defense.
Caught the ball. Jaden's oh shit, I guess. Okay, whatever. Threw the ball to Rudy, and Rudy dunked it kind of at the buzzer to cover. But so that's what he does. He does play until the final whistle. And I thought that was maybe, it was a really cool moment post game with Finch because they asked him hey, what was that about? And Finch is if you're going to press us, we're going to score. And just kind of a major FU. And it's that's exactly the mentality. Sometimes these teams pull the dogs off, but if they're doubling dudes in the backcourt. So yeah, he swung it to Kyle Anderson. Could Rudy Gobert, by the way, my favorite part of the whole week, maybe of the season, maybe of my 34 years on earth was Grady and Jim Pete were great on the call as always. We're big fans of them. But then I like to go watch the other broadcast. And the Utah broadcast is one of the 5 worst in the league. And the guy's Rudy probably should have just held the ball and said, thank you.
Yeah.
I was buddy.
Okay, guy.
Okay, guy. You want him to just I don't know, put it in a bow and hand it off to a fan. So I had no problem with it. And then just for Malik and Vando to have major issue with it. It was a cool moment to see Jaden stood up for Rudy and stuff, but just a really stupid moment where it's did you not remember that less than a month ago you did the exact same thing?
And in general, why are we getting in professional sports the amount of adult athletes that get upset about taunting or if in baseball there's a million of these, just if you bunt after the 7th inning of a no-hitter, then the pitcher gets mad. It's just play the game. If there's a blowout, you're all professionals. I could see in high school or college, it's a bunch of kids. Okay, maybe call the dogs off or whatever, but you guys are all getting what was the collective? If you combine, well, I guess it would be whatever roughly whatever the salary cap is. We're literally talking about a group of men that are making collectively $300 million on the court that night. Who cares? Your job is to go out and play and entertain and whatever. And if someone punches you, okay, that's it. Okay, be offended. But if someone in the flow of a game, whatever the score is, just scores a basket on you or bunts on you or throws a pass play late in the game, that's part of the game. So grow some thick skin, for God's sakes.
So we made a great point. I tweeted out the video. The Jazz did the same thing to the Wolves. Let's also not forget that 3 or 4 minutes prior to Rudy dunking the ball at the buzzer, Malik Beasley gave the entire Timberwolves bench a lap dance.
Yeah,
he hit a 3 and then turned the entire bench into deja vu. He shimmied so long, I thought someone was going to fight him. Yeah. So it's buddy, again, you are not the Pope here of fair play and ethics. You lost. When the Wolves lost, Vando screamed. They all went to the locker room and they're sad and mad, whatever. You lost at home. get off the court, let Rudy twerk, whatever he wants to do, and we move forward. Just
amazing, dude.
Just incredible lack of self-awareness. And I'm with you too. Like, I don't know, man. We're all going to die at some point. Like, enjoy the good things you do in life. Like, if you get a good win, celebrate. If you hit a home run, pimp that thing out, whatever. Celebrate in the end zone. Just
lighten up. Yeah.
We need to have fun in sports. We're
all just specks of dust. We're all nothing matters. Someone hit me up last week on Twitter and was like, like what you said doesn't matter, or like what you do, or like your opinion doesn't matter or something. Like, well, I mean, how far do you want to take that? Nothing really matters. We're all just here for like a fleeting amount of time in the history of the universe. So Malik Beasley, have some perspective. Put on a meditation or something. Let's do a quick round of flagrant or no, where we throw out statements and then decide if the statements are a flagrant foul, which is like way over the top, or if it's not a foul, just nothing to see here, okay? Statement number 1. Chris Finch is on the hot seat.
I would say, I'm biased, but I would say flagrant. I think that's crazy. I think it's a big month for new ownership. This is supposed to be the month that kind of the next phase of whether it be physical check or kind of an agreement letter that's like, hey, we're going to keep paying for this. We're going to keep taking over. Mark Lowry was really big in pushing for the extensions for Chris Finch and his assistants. Now, it hasn't been great. Some of the issues, like last night, the Wolves are getting spanked. And I was sitting next to Dane. I was like, is he going to use one of these timeouts, or is he going to give them to Ryan Saunders for Christmas? Like, what are we doing here? He's probably had more mix-ups this season in 27 games than he had in his first 140. But to some of these issues, like, I'll just say what I think. I was in the locker room for 2 nights. I don't think Chris Finch has lost the locker room. When you ask questions and they refer to him still as like Finchy and stuff, I know that sounds really vague, but like, I think those guys still ride for Chris Finch. I don't think he's lost the locker room. To the people who think we got to fire the coach because the effort's not there, Jace Frederick had a really good tweet today, like about an old Greg Popovich quote. That's like, hey man, like you don't try to amp up the guy that fixes your car, right? Like you don't go psych up the doctor. Like, you're professional. Like, the energy stuff. Some of this stuff is your responsibility. You're professional athletes. Like, you get paid millions of dollars. If you're going to come out flat, you might be able to put a new coach in there that injects a little energy, but that fades away after a while. Like, Chris Finch is one of the best assets they have. I've been more frustrated with him this season than, again, in the first 2 combined, but they're going to give him a long rope. They're going to let this experiment play out a little bit. And then this summer, maybe they make a big pivot. Maybe they make a big move again. And then he gets on the hot seat. But I don't really believe at all that he's on the hot seat or that his job's in jeopardy.
I'm going to say it's not a foul. Like, I'm going to say, if you think about this, I don't think he's going to get fired tomorrow, but I think I think the seat's warm because, and I'm with you. I generally think he's done an outstanding job, especially last year. And I think he's a really smart guy. And this is just about, it's getting things to gel, and it's a hard job. They gave him a really, really hard job here, and some players that don't just organically fit together necessarily in today's NBA. And so it's a tough puzzle. But at the end of the day, you got a new ownership group coming in here. These guys did not necessarily pick Finch. Tim Connolly did not necessarily pick Finch. You can't just like overhaul the roster completely at this point. So if things don't go well at some point and there's more apathy or fan angst, something has to change. And I could see him being a scapegoat to a different solution.
That's fair.
I don't think it's imminent, but I don't think he's just like has a free pass to be the coach for the next 2 or 3 years, or if things get really bad for the rest of this year. So the seat's not sizzling yet, but it's not like Cliff Kingsbury with the Cardinals right now, where he's literally probably back channeling college football coaching jobs. I don't think we're there, but it's definitely not a cold seat for Chris Finch.
No, and again, I've always my Luke Ridenour take. I don't care if the team has 12 Luke Ridenours if they win 50 games. I don't care who coaches the team. If you told me that it was a guarantee they're going to get better, I guess my pushback, not on you, but on general, is like, I've seen Chris Finch coach this team and they've done well. I've heard what players say behind the scenes about him, and it's really good. I haven't seen Tim Connolly build a winner. yet, right? Like I haven't seen Rudy Gobert lead the Timberwolves by himself to a playoff run. And I say all that just like, you don't want to cut your nose off or whatever to spite your face. Like I know Finchie's a good one. It might not be working right now, but the last thing I want to do is if the Gobert trade does turn out to be a seismic mistake, that you start compounding that with more mistakes, like giving up a good coach to go, I don't know, find some, let Cliff Kingsbury coach the team. So we're probably in the middle, right? Like I think it's a cold seat. I don't think you think it's a hot seat, but there's probably, if you've ever started your car in a January winter, we're probably like a minute into the car starting, right? Like just like sure, it's still freezing outside. It's still your car's half frozen, but maybe it's just like slowly starting to cook.
Yeah. I got one more for you here. Flagrant or no, Josh Minot is the Energizer Bunny the Timberwolves need at some point this season.
Listen. Didn't go super well when I begged and yelled at team employees to let Luka Garza play. So I'm trying to be a little more reserved. Josh actually got recalled from the Iowa Wolves Monday morning. So he actually was on a plane Monday, got in right before the game, shot around a little bit. He is so damn springy and so he's pretty much like our next Jaden McDaniels in terms of size and height and ability and all this stuff. But I also learned last night that in a game where you're down 20 and you just needed a jolt, Finch, that might be one of Finch's flaws, is that he just seems like a guy who is not really going to trust the super young guys. I'm still shocked Wendell Moore has ever played. And he gave you good minutes, but I would love to see you just throw. I think good teams do this, Phil. Like I think the Bucks might just throw a rookie out there for 6 minutes and be like, can you swim with the big boys? I wish Finch would do that. Be like, hey, I have all these injuries. You can't really get mad at me because I don't have a lot of other options. Let me throw Minot out there. But I don't know if it's going to happen. But still a big Josh Minot fan. Again, you don't do what you do in the G League if you don't have skill. I think he has transferable skill. He can shoot. He can defend. But I don't know. I don't know if it's going to come yet.
I think I'm going to say it's flagrant. It's flagrant.
Yeah,
because it is a little early for it. But he's the type of dude you kind of hope that Jaden McDaniels can be more of this guy, like you said, where he's just all right. You just need someone to fly around out there and go grab 12 rebounds once in a while, if whether Rudy does or doesn't. But once everyone kind of comes back healthy too, it's just are you gonna not play Jaden McDaniels? Are you gonna not play one of your other wing players like Taurean Prince? Is he just gonna sit for? But at some point, Minot is the type of energy that you could really use on this team, but I do think it's just he's a little raw and it's a little early.
And as the president of the Jaden McDaniels fan club, like he was a top high school kid, went to college, fell in the draft, and he has the personality that in an ideal situation you'd want, right? He's like, I'm okay being the fifth option on a team.
Yeah.
And mostly when you're all at full health and everything's working, that's cool because you're not going to have the ego, you're not going to have the problems. But then, to earlier conversations, like now you need to be better. Josh Minot is the type of guy that might have like the number 41 tattooed on his wrist for how many guys got drafted ahead of him.
Yeah.
I remember in Vegas, like I'd be like, hey, Josh, what'd you see on this one play? And he would pivot the conversation into being like, there weren't 41 guys better than me in the draft. So he was there were some real smart people. Like John Hollinger I think he had him as like his 8th best prospect in this draft.
Wow.
So I think the cool thing about Josh and something that this team lacks is that he has like a chip on his shoulder. I mean, you for better or worse, you got a lot of guys on this team that were first overall picks, second overall picks, lottery picks. Josh Minot, and that's like the Jalen Noel thing, the Naz Reid thing. You got these guys that are second rounders that are super pissed off that they're not making $8 million a year, that they weren't drafted 21st. So that is the one component. They have other athletes, they have other shooters, but Josh Minot's the type of guy, he's kind of a dog. He's got that dog in him. Like he would be, if things don't pick up or they just kind of stay stale, he's the shot in the arm that could just like bring a little swagger to a team that for the most part, surprisingly, doesn't really have a lot of swagger.
Yeah. Interesting. He's going to keep tearing up Iowa, and I'm sure at some point he'll get more of a look than just garbage time. Probably not before the first of the year, but
he nicknamed himself the lawnmower in Vegas. The lawnmower. He gets the job done. He gets everyone riled up. So unleash the lawnmower. Think of all the marketing you could do with the lawnmower.
Great nickname. Yes.
I don't even know what it means, but it's like, wow, just to nickname yourself after an appliance or like after a tool.
It's almost like when like Kevin Love became the glass cleaner, and then they would send out those PR packages with like Windex spray and stuff.
Well, if the Wolves are 12 games below 500 come like late March and the snow is thawing, they just have to do a full like start up the lawnmower.
Oh, here he comes.
Here he comes. Game 72, Josh Minot starting small forward. Snow is melting. Time to cut the grass.
That's amazing. All right, well, that's a wrap on this episode of your favorite Timberwolves lifestyle podcast, Flagrant Howls. He's Kyle. And I'm Phil. And you can always hit us up if you've got feedback for the show that we can read on our second episode of the week, likely Thursday this week. You can hit us up in the YouTube comment section on Score North YouTube channel. Click subscribe and or the feedback tab in the Score North app, which is a great place you can send emails to us. All right, we'll see you later this week, my friend.
See you.
That's a wrap. Flagrant Howls. See you guys.